네, 안녕하세요. 2021 한반도 국제평화 포럼 세션 4의 1 대결 공간에서 연대 공간으로 두만강 유역 초국경 협력을 위한 사회 연대 접근법 세션을 시작하도록 하겠습니다. 저는 오늘 진행을 맡은 성공회대학교 사회적경제대학원의 김창진입니다. 반갑습니다.
성공회 University Graduate School of Social and Solidarity Economy Professor.
오늘 세션은 10시 40분부터 12시 10분까지로
So
예정되어 있는데요.
we will continue this session until 12:10. We will hear from 3 presenters and 3 discussants. Can you please say hi to the audience? We have with us Director Jo Sung-chan of Academy of Northeast Asian Studies. We have Professor Lee Chan-woo from Japan and President Kim Hyun-dong. And we also have with us, as I introduced, President Kim Hyun-dong. We have with us visiting scholar Kim Young-chan, who will be providing feedback on one of the presentations. We have with us Professor Choi Moon, who has joined us virtually. Last but not least, we are joined by Secretary General Lee Ju-sung of Korea NGO Council for Cooperation with North Korea. We have with us 3 presenters and 3 discussants. With that, I would like to begin session 4-1. The presenters will have 15 minutes each for their presentations. But as for President Kim Hyun-dong, I think that the presentation will be quite exciting as he will be sharing more case studies. So Professor Lee Chan-woo actually gave President Kim Hyun-dong 5 more minutes from his time. So thank you very much for that spirit of solidarity. First of all, we will hear from Mr. Jo Sung-chan.
감사합니다.
Thank you very much. As was introduced, I am Sung-chan Jo from Hananuri, Academy of Northeast Asian Societies. We are an NGO registered the Korean government, and we are a research institute, and our logo is of a windmill, and it is represents that we're trying to create a new wind. On the Northeast Asia, we need peace for us to have peace on the Korean Peninsula. And so, based on this idea, we are enjoying the work that we do. The presentation that I am going to be giving today might feel a bit unfamiliar to you. It is a concept of transboundary collaboration and also the concept of social solidarity economy. It might feel unfamiliar and a bit difficult to understand, but I'll try my best to deliver my message. You will see a diagram on the slide, and during last year's session, this is a diagram that I showed. Last year, I showed you 2 approaches. Approach 1 and Approach 2. So how can we facilitate exchange between the 2 Koreas? And so it is an approach that I suggested last year. After the presentation last year, I thought about many things. The first approach, due to the block of inter-Korean exchanges at the time, could not be pursued. And Approach 2 is related to international organizations, and it is about SDGs being used as a platform for multinational exchange and cooperation. And I think it will take some time for us to go toward Approach 2. So before we go on to Approach 2, I think we can think about an interim approach, which is a regional approach, utilizing the Tumen River area. Hananuri currently is carrying out community work at Razon area. We provide loans without any interest to social social enterprises. Razon has importance geopolitically and also in terms of its geographical location. So we felt that this will be an important foothold into realizing peace in Northeast Asia. And in my presentation today, I'm going to focus on the third approach, which is a regional approach. I think we need to have some organization of concepts. Borders represent a disconnection, disconnect. But also, if you look at Europe and other countries, borders can also be perceived as connection. And Young-bok Shin talked about the dynamic aspects of the peripheries. So from this perspective, I thought that transboundary areas have a lot of importance. And next on the social solidarity economy concept, so it is a concept widely shared among those in the research area. So first we have to explain social economy to understand social and solidarity economy. And the social economy arose from the limitations and trying to overcome the limitations of capitalism in the 19th century. In Korean society, we have social economies surrounded around co-ops. And as a researcher, I felt that a social economy is an important concept, but we need to be more focused. And I felt that we needed a new concept. In particular, for sustainable development, human rights, and environment to be stressed, internationally, we are seeing emergence and highlighting of social and solidarity economies. And for some groups of people, they define SSE as a strategic means to implement and realize SDG. So I felt that in a transboundary area, SSE is a concept that needs to be further developed. The first meaning will be about existing social economy, and if we go on to a more second scope encompassing concept, it is about including other actors that try to bring about transboundary solidarity. And I think I already explained the need for this. We need to have a regional platform as an interim strategy. Sidestepping from the main theme, there is the DPRK VNR. I talked about SDG, and as UN pursues SDG, not only ROK, but DPRK is actively participating. In July of 2021, DPRK submitted their VNR. It is for all countries that are implementing SDG. They have to do a review of their situation, and it is to be submitted every 5 years. And for the very first time, DPRK submitted their VNR. And we carried out the translation of DPRK's VNR. The key points of the VNR is that DPRK has a 5-year economic development strategy, and that their 5-year economic strategy is closely connected and aligned with the UN SDG. And they converted their NDGs into the SDG targets and goals. You can review the report, or rather the national review on the internet. And I listed the 17 SDG goals of DPRK. And if you look at the goals, it's mostly related to improving the lives of their people. It is about water, urban development, human rights, education, and water, sanitation, so forth. Of course, going toward the bottom, there are some socialist community being strengthened. However, overall, it is about their people and improving the life of the DPRK people. And I think this is closely connected with SSE.
예, 그래서 이제 VNR 보고서를 조금 더 말씀을 드리면
So going on
제가 앞에서 접근법
with the content of the VNR,
제시했죠. 초국경 협력을 위한 사회연대
there is the third approach that I talked about, the regional approach, and I identified and realized that there are some targets in DPRK's VNR related to transboundary cooperation. For example, 17.6, it is about transboundary approaches, and in 6.5, they talk about integrated water resources being implemented through transboundary cooperation, and 8.9 talks about sustainable tourism. And so I felt that DPRK's SDG implementation strategy can be connected closely with SSE. From the end of the 1980s, UNDP tried to develop the Tumen River area. And even before that, during the end of the Joseon dynasty, many Koreans went to this area to overcome hunger. Well, in any case, in the early 1990s, there was TRAD, and there was the GTI. Aligned with this, North Korea developed their Razon Special Development Strategy, and Russia also had their Far East Development Strategy. However, due to sanctions against DPRK, the Tumen River Cooperation Project could not be fully implemented. So transboundary collaboration, despite its importance, is not being implemented at the moment. Next, what I want to explain is about various projects in the transboundary collaboration, but there is a project that's not big in size, however, is quite significant, and it is still being carried out, and it is quite meaningful that it is being still carried out, and the Chinese government is leading this project. It is about international tourism project, and it is included in the Chinese Hunchun development project, and it is a project of small size that is being carried out led by China with Russia and DPRK. You will see that the model is joint management and joint development. So this area is about 100 square kilometers, and it is a commons. It's considered as a commons maybe in English. Well, this area will be born into a non-border area, and here you can go in without a visa for 72 hours, and they have created a new economic area. I was wondering if this was actually being implemented, and according to an explanation of one at DPRK, I heard that it has not been actually implemented, and these are some pictures that I took myself. If you look below, it says that you can board a yacht. So I saw that they have some yacht docks here, but it's not a big-scale project at the moment. But in any case, there are transboundary collaboration trends being found in the Tumen River estuary area. Another project I want to touch upon is the Razon Economic Trade Zone. So this was prepared by the DPRK from Razon, and it shows pictures of China and DPRK joining hands together, and it does not show Japan, however, and Korea in this picture. But it shows that Razon is being considered an important region for cooperation by DPRK. So as a small summary, the Tumen River area has high potential, but projects are not being implemented. Therefore, we need to approach it on a micro level instead of a macro level. And I think that SSE has meaning. And in order to show you why SSE is meaningful, I want to show you the case of Basel. Basel is a cross-boundary area of Swiss and Switzerland and France and Germany. And I read about this from Young-chul Kim's writings and papers. And then I studied it in detail. What is important about Basel is that Switzerland, although it's not a member of the EU, could develop the Basel area into an important area because of the cooperation of the three countries, and they had infrastructure that crossed borders. So going on to the details, if you take a look at the map, it is the gray area. There are borderlines, but the city has been developed that go across these national borders. And on the right-hand side, you might not understand this and see this clearly, but the red circle is on the border of Switzerland and France. But they have a house built on top of this border. So this is a symbol of the close cooperation of the two countries, enabling people to build their houses on borders. And there are some important organizations. There's TEB. It's on the bottom of this picture. So above that, it shows the governance structure of individual countries. So they have the local governments and national governments and the European Union. But below that, there is a non-government organization called TEB that plays an important role in transboundary cooperation in this area. Another thing is related to the theme of this session, which is Social Economy Basel. It is an organization that was established, and I found in an article that SEB started from 1996, and it helped in the development of this area, social, regional, and ecological sustainability. It contributed to this. And as soon as this was established, Social Economy Basel was established, Germany, France, and Luxembourg cooperated. Through SSE, they are trying to cooperate for economic and regional development. And the paper details this. Another organization here is the cooperative. And it is a cooperation of various organizations. Each organization will have one vote. In a social economy, even if they are not a part of this social economy, individuals and companies can participate. So if we have a SSE network in Northeast Asia, such an organization as the one we are seeing will play a central role. I'll try to end my presentation in 2 hours, rather 2 minutes. And they are considering developing a alternative currency. And I found this on a blog. It is a retail co-op called Migros, and it plays an important role in Swiss and Switzerland, and it's also playing an important role in Basel. So, to summarize, I showed you an European example. However, there is also an example found in Korea, such as An Jung-gun's proposal for the Eastern Peace Theory that he proposed. And he proposed a similar transboundary cooperation model. Jung-gun An is considered an important figure in DPRK. The stamp that you see on the top is one that was used in the DPRK. I could not go into concrete ideas for the SSE network, but I've identified some organizations that can be included in the network. So there are some in Razon, some in Primorsky, and so forth. So this is the conclusion.
유엔이 추진하고 있는 SDG 플랫폼
UN is pursuing an SDG platform. We should actively take advantage of this platform to identify areas in which we can to cooperate. And we have the Tumen River networks that's in the initial phase, but we hope that it can be developed. And next year, we hope to have a workshop at Primorsky. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Director Cho, you talked about the possibility of SSC network for cross-border cooperation in the Tumen River Basin.
And you talked about the Basel project, rather the case, and An Jung-gun's theory and proposal. We will go on to the next presentation provided by Professor Lee.
Professor Lee will talk about SSE of Razon Special Economic Zone and possible transboundary cooperation. And you said that you will limit your presentation within 10 minutes. So the floor is yours. Hello everyone, my name is Lee-chan Woo from Daekyeo University. The presentation today that I would like to deliver is titled SSE of Razon Special Economic Zone and Possible Transboundary Cooperation. So is there SSE in North Korea? Well, we can look at various elements that consist SSE. So we can look at co-ops as well as collective ownership. But since North Korea is a socialist economy, well, it's owned by the state. And sometimes many people tend to distinguish individual ownership, co-op ownership, as well as all people ownership. However, this is not an accurate approach that we can take. So we see many co-ops in the regions, and they can serve as the foundation of SSEs. So this is what I would like to suggest. So if we look at the co-ops in Razon, first off, we have co-op farms. We also have fisheries co-ops that fall under primary industry. And under secondary industry, North Korea has production co-op models. So we can look at what roles they play, and it seems like they play an important role in the regions. Now, if we turn our eyes to consumer co-op, then this was ended after they turned state-owned associations. However, this is from 1947 to today, the history of production co-op, and moving on to the history of Razon's co-ops. So this was 1947 Nodong Shinmun, which talks about Razon co-op, about the different Razon consumer co-op as well as the different co-op stores in the region. So we can actually see that there are many types of co-ops in this region. And this is production co-op. And you can see here that they have Joseon production co-ops as well as steel production co-op, and at the same time they also have Raksan alluvial gold production co-ops. So very different types of co-ops exist in the zone. At the same time, they also have Razon furniture production co-ops, and furniture production co-ops exist in almost all cities and counties, according to Nodong Shinmun. And Razon Seonbong is actually the full name of Razon. And if we travel back to 1959, what happened back then was the Seonbong County State-run General Farm was the first case to convert co-op farm into state-run farm. All the various agricultural co-ops, fisheries establishments, and co-ops were turned into one state-run farm on a trial basis. So this is a case that we can look at to learn about Razon's special economic zone. Now, all the co-op farms and fishery co-ops and local industrial factories were integrated within the region. over the past 7 decades, socialist economy and state-run economy was the principle of the regime. And now here you see the different types of co-ops and collective ownership. They have different types of financial institutions as well as co-ops that exist in North Korea. And we can see that from the 2000s, which is a distinctive feature under the Kim Jong-un regime. Of course, because of COVID-19, the market cannot function well, and the regime currently faces crisis. But even if we were to say that this was a very special case, we can say that the non-state-run associations grew exponentially over the past few decades in North Korea. One of them would be the emergence of 돈주, which are the new wealthy class. Then what do they do? We can see examples of 돈주 funding businesses in Razon, and they operate financial institutions in Razon. In Razon, we have many 돈주 who have established commercial banks. So in many aspects, this new wealthy class contributes to SSE. And they have actually been awarded with a medal from the chairman, although they are not members of the WPK party. Now we see some examples from 노동신문. Now here they talk about how all the projects were funded by 돈주, and that 돈주 were responsible for carrying out the projects, including educational projects and other types of projects such as healthcare. Now, Razon is a special economic zone, as I mentioned. So rather than being centrally controlled, it assumes independence. So it is a special zone, and it's more of a regional economy type model rather than central economy type. So these are some of the characteristics of the special economic zone in Razon. It's a test bed in North Korea. And as the professor mentioned, it is a zone that allows transboundary cooperation, and it is actually one of the few zones that allows such cooperation in North Korea, although it has Kumgang Mountain and Kaesong Industrial Complex. So in that sense, we can highlight the importance of this special economic zone. The zone has been carrying out projects to attract foreign investment. As you can see from the slide, they've also jointly formed a commission to carry out different initiatives. However, everything has been suspended in the past few years, and recently no investment has been made into the zone. Now, since 1998, the Korean businesses cannot invest nor visit in the zone in Razon. You can see some of the examples of investment that the zone attracted. This is the list of the investments that were made, and in total, it's about 100 billion Korean won. Here you see Hong Kong's case, Thailand's case, as well as Japanese Koreans who invested in this zone. But this is not business-to-business type partnership because of the UN sanctions. Now, if we look at any cooperation possibility in the region, then I think we need to shift our perspective because it is unlikely that economic sanctions will be lifted for the time being unless the North Korean government changes its course. And until now, this region has been quite affected by the economic sanctions in terms of trade control and investment ban. So we need to maybe provide microcredit for self-help economic activities of the North Korean residents. At the same time, we also need to devise a new type of humanitarian assistance and cooperation. So by that, I mean that we should work internationally to export maybe folk crafts and daily necessities that are not subject to trade control through co-ops. Because co-ops may not fall under the economic sanctions posed by the UN, this can rise as a new possibility. And through China and Korea, I see some hopes to the future in terms of investment into the zone. With that, I would like to wrap up my presentation. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much for being on time. So you talked about SSC in Razon and possible transboundary cooperation. When we discuss inter-Korean cooperation, sometimes we do not fully grasp what's happening in North Korea. We only rely on South Korea's determination and devotion. However, that's not sufficient to cooperate with the regime. We have to fully understand what's happening in the regime. When we talk about inter-Korean relations as well as reunification, we learn much from the Germany's case. If we travel back several decades, there were many transactions and trades and exchanges between the two Germanys, but they did not fully understand each other. Once the Berlin Wall collapsed and they found out that they knew little about each other. In that sense, we need to learn more about each other, and learning about North Korea will help us move forward. Next, I would like to present the next speaker. We have with us President Kim Hyun-dong of North Asia Food Co-op, who will talk about the Trans-Boundary Network case studies.
예, 안녕하십니까? 농부가 식품협동조합의 김현.
Hello everyone, I am Hyun-dong Kim
제가 앞으로 발제를
from Northeast Asia Food Co-op.
사례를 발표하는데 충실해야
So
되겠다라고 생각.
we heard two presentations before mine, and we heard about the concepts of SSE. So I want to talk about an actual case. So for the past 20 years, there was a lot of thoughts and ideas about the problem, and I'm trying to reinterpret the issues at hand, and I think it's a welcoming thing that we can revisit the issues that we face. Northeast Asian Food Co-op is the organization that I am a part of. And in 1996, I was the director of international affairs at the foundation of the Korean Sharing Movement. And I was carrying out my work in Yeonbyeon of China, and two things that I was active on was helping the ethnic Koreans living in China overcome fraud cases when they were faced with fraud cases, to support them. And with that problem, during that time, in 1997, there was the DPRK's Arduous March, and so during the Arduous March era, there were North Korean defectors going to China, and alongside with the ethnic Koreans living in China, supporting them when they were defrauded, we supported
두만강을 넘어서 오는
the North Korean defectors, so food refugees we call them, that were coming across the Tumen River in order to look for food. And for 3 years,
지원하는 활동을 두만강에서
we carried out food aid activities in the Tumen River area. And we saw the food security issue on the Korean Peninsula and Dprk. And it was a time for me to think about food security. Since that event,
뭐 어떤 계기로 활동을 이제 연해주로 옮기게
we
됩니다.
decided to move our activities from China to Primorsky, and it was the area in which ethnic Koreans moved from Central Asia to this area in Russia.
두만강을 매일 보다가 두만강
And we were looking at Tumen River from China, but then we looked at Tumen River from Primorsky.
단면이 뭐였냐면
So we saw that there were different situations, and so these are the pictures that we took
9년도 요런
in 1999.
두 사진이 그 두만강에서 봤던 무산 쪽 사진이었는데
So they were pictures taken from the Tumen River, and you can see that there aren't any trees. And when I went to Primorsky,
그러니까 개간 개척을 하지 않은 무한한 땅들이 그냥 지평선처럼
there were massive land that was not cultivated yet.
땅이 없어서 저런 환경에
So there were
굶어 죽고 있는
one part of the Tumen River that was barren, and the other area they had land that could be used. And so divided by the Tumen River, there was a stark contrast of the situation. And the Tumen River area's reality was something that I could realize firsthand at the time. And since then,
동포들이 어떤 정착 관련된 지원 사업을 하면서
we provided support to ethnic Koreans living in Russia so they could settle down.
발전을 한 게 이 문제를 해결하기 위한 동북아 평화
And then we created an organization of the Northeast Asia Peace Movement, and this organization also created the Russia Northeast Asia Peace Fund. I'll show you some pictures
그리고 이제 그 농업 정착 지원 사업을
later on. And we provided support for agriculture. And we thought about what the identity of this agricultural settlement support project should be. And we thought it should be a social economy, and we created social enterprises and co-ops. So there was this process of the past 20 years, and I think the issue raising of the seminar is connected with these activities of 20 years. So I give you an overview of the history, and I will now add, looking at the pictures, the ones below, you will see the picture of those who were defrauded. There were like Chinese, Koreans, and they wanted to come to South Korea, but they became victims of a scam, and we tried to support them. And on the right, you will see the people, the ethnic Koreans living in China, appealing to people of how they were included in this scam. And it was until 1999, up till 2000.
그다음에 이제 여기 보시면 동북아 평화연대와 동북아 평화
And you will now see the establishment of the Russia Northeast Asia Peace Organization and the fund. So it is an organization still in operation, and with the establishment of the Northeast Asia Peace Movement, we could support the residents in Primorsky to settle down.
이게 이제 저희가 99년도에 첫
So it was in 1999 that we first supported the ethnic Koreans called Koryo-in for them to settle down, and there are two areas in which they settled, and this was the first area. The Russian central government and Primorsky provisional government cooperated for this. And so there was an area where the army had their bases, and then they left and gave this land to the Koryo-in, ethnic Koreans. And on the left, you can see the establishment of the Northeast Asia Peace Company and Northeast Asia Peace Fund. So we carried out agriculture settlement support projects. So an important settlement support is the agriculture support. And the reason why we focus on this was because we wanted to solve the issue on the Korean Peninsula by having cooperation in Northeast Asia. And we got this idea from the vast land in Primorsky in Russia. These Koryo-in, minorities living in Russia, who are ethnic Korean, are thought to be vanguards and blazing people in the agriculture. They went all the way to a lake area, and they were performing agriculture. And this area has now become a major grain field. So these ethnic Koreans in Russia are famous for their ability to cultivate land and to realize agriculture. And they were sent to another area, and they created farm areas there, and they become heroes of farming in Central Asia. So they are people who work very hard in agriculture, and they are considered to be very successful farmers. And then in the third generation, they had to think about how they will settle, but it was not easy for them to settle down. That is because China realized the opening up and reforming of agriculture. And in Kilim area, they had to compete with the Chinese farmers. So they wanted to settle down in certain areas with agriculture, but they did not have the fund to do that. So we decided to carry out such agriculture settling down projects. And this is a village called Ujong village, and they created the very first Koryo-in village here. And this was the beginning of the support for agricultural settlement, and this village was established. And we saw that there were unsuccessful approaches, and Korea Housing Corporation decided to build 1,000 houses, but they only could build 30 houses, and the South Korea went through a financial crisis, and that funding for building homes could not continue. But this village could survive, and we used this village to start work in 2004, creating an agricultural settlement village. In Korea, there were organizations set up such as Primorsky Flow and support organizations. So we did a project to create 6 ethnic Korean villages. And there was the Primco farm.
공장이 그 IMF로 또 이제 쓰러지게 생긴.
And this Primco farm was on the brink of bankruptcy. And this company discussed matters with social enterprises, and we said that they wanted to use their methods as a social work. And we purchased a massive land, and we wanted to create a farm that could support funding for the settlement in Primorsky. And there in Primorsky, they created various programs to develop this, and in South Korea, social enterprises were established to support the work in Primorsky. And at the time, beans became a theme, and the Tumen River's name comes from the word soybean. And when we went to certain areas, we saw that there's a lot of soybean farming. And for 20 years, soybean farming, since the collapse of the Soviet Union, there was this piece of land that did not use any fertilizers. And Soviet Union, what was important to them was they were against GMOs. So they had a policy of having non-GMO agriculture in Russia. So we decided to combine organic farming with non-GMO agriculture as a symbol for farming in this Primorsky area. So this is the agriculture village of Koryo-in. And this is another village. It's a picture of that village in the early phase. And they had organic farming. They were testing this. And on the bottom area, you can see the bean paste fermenting factory. Such soybean products and soybean paste was introduced in Korea. And the one that we can make immediately was the soybean paste and the fermented soybean. So we introduced this and sold this in South Korea. And we brought in the soybeans to make soybean milk and also tofu. In addition to these activities, in Russia, in the ethnic Korean villages, using these products, we created a co-op in which the ethnic Koreans could have direct sales to South Koreans and those living in other areas. And you can see a processing site in one village, and another area makes dog and rice cakes and other products. And this is a picture of a villager who produces fruits and vegetables, and there are 300 households in the village, and these villagers are maintaining direct sales for the past 8 years with the South Koreans. So this is the delivery of the products from the co-op. So such ethnic Korean agriculture settlement carried out activities using these villages. And then there was overseas agriculture activities in Korea. So Primco, they had their first farm in Co-op, and this farm was used to fund activities in Primorsky. And in Korea, this became popular, and they created a overseas agriculture team in the Ministry of Agriculture, and companies became interested. So the ethnic Korean villages,
현지 플랫폼 같은
it
역할을
became a
하게 되면서
platform,
10여 개의 해외 농업
the initial platform, and now there are 10 overseas farms.
동북아 평화 기금이나 동북아 식품
So the
한국의 해외 농업의 일환으로
Russia Northeast Asia Peace Fund is carrying out activities like this too. So
농업과 연해주
Korea's overseas agriculture activities and the Korean
농장은 워낙
farms, it became a governance model. The farms, it costs a lot of money to create these big farms. So that was supported by the companies, and the villagers could participate in the processing because you need human resources. And so there is this
되면서
primary production and the processing, and they now can move together.
여기서 드디어 이제 그 오른쪽에 보이는 사진이
And the picture on the right-hand side
이제 프링코 농장
is the Primco farm during the harvest season in fall.
농장이 연해주에서
This farm is small in size in Primorsky, but it's 5 million 평.
규모가 약 한 10만 헥타르 3억 평쯤 됩니다.
So it's about 100,000 hectares in total, all of these farms.
농사하는 모습이
And so this is the pictures of farming
그다음에 이제 여름
in spring, summer,
때
fall, and during the harvest.
요 이렇게 진행을 해오던
So we were carrying out these farms, and there was social enterprises, and then in 2000 around 15 we took on another theme, which was the non-GMO soybeans.
앞착공 다른 사업입니다.
And we did a non-GMO compressed soy processing activity. So we did some soybean squeezing and processing, and this was about overcoming the climate change issue through
그리고 그 얘기를 가장
soybean, and
급식이라고 생각.
also we thought that a good idea would be providing food to schools, meals to schools. And so we provided these food products, non-GMO soybeans, and also vegetable-based protein to these schools.
다양한 노력들을 기울이기
And so various activities and efforts were carried out, and I don't have any more time, so you can read through the slides, and so it's about vegetable-based
앞으로
protein.
지금 어떤 생각이냐면 해왔던 주체들은
So what we are thinking is
생명공장
we are considering creating a non-GMO
단계로
bio village.
압착 가공자들이
And the first phase will be on squeeze processing of soybeans, non-GMO
쪽에 이 콩과 이
soybeans, and we want to find ways to work with DPRK. We are discussing, and we keep on knocking on their doors, but it's not processing very well, going ahead very well. But once we have project pilot processing factories, maybe DPRK can participate, and during our activities,
고난의 행군을 거치는데 가장 중요한 역할을
we saw that in DPRK, as they were overcoming the arduous march, they used vegetable-based protein, and in the DPRK, food is a major issue for them. And for us to tackle climate change, a national
고난의 행군 때문에
challenge was carried out by DPRK because of their arduous march and such vegetable-based protein, and soybean oil can be an area where we can cooperate with North Korea, creating a network for production and processing. And Razon can be an important area for this.
예, 마치겠습니다.
Sorry, I will now end. Thank you.
러시아 연해주에서
So we heard about
진행되고 있는 사회 연대 경제
this social solidarity economy being carried out in Primorsky. We heard about its history and current projects. So Primorsky is an important area for us, and it's not evaluated properly here in Korea, South Korea, but I feel that it can be a key region, a hub for co-prosperity in Northeast Asia, and that it can be an area that connects the two Koreas and China and Russia. In addition, it can be an area that acts as a hub to overcome food security, and it can also contribute in overcoming the food crisis in DPRK. Therefore, if we use the land in Russia and administrative support and Korea's experience and technology and DPRK's human resources, Primorsky can become an area of co-prosperity, and I'm sure that this area has high potential for this. We have the challenge of implementing this at hand. Next, we will go on to the discussion.
So first off, we'll hear from visiting scholar Kim Young-chan of International University Institute for Unification and Integration. So you can direct your discussion to any presenter that you would like to. You have 5 minutes.
들리시나요?
Do you hear me?
고맙습니다.
Thank you very much. My name is Kim Young-chan. I'm a visiting scholar at International University. I also worked at Kiev and Bank of Korea. And I believe that this type of discussion carries huge significance. As you can see from the title of this session, it's from the space of confrontation to the space of solidarity, social solidarity and economic cooperation in super-border regions. I think this applies to me and others as well. Not many people are aware of Tumen River Super-Border Region because we don't really think about transboundary zones. There's no such concept anymore. And the idea of transnational economic cooperation is quite new. So I would like to see more discussions taking place on these topics. And I'm happy to be here today. So whenever we talk about Tumen River Super-Border Region, I am reminded of the importance of maps. From 1987, we have been continuing ties with Germany. Well, I was involved in the studies on Germany, and when I visited Germany first, I was surprised to see the transnational and transborder driving as well as passing. And when you cross a border by car, it feels so much different from when you cross a border by plane. So this is the border that you pass. So you will be able to find signages about, up to Paris, how many kilometers left, up to Basel, how many kilometers left, and I was very impressed to see such signages. So whenever we talk about Tumen River and Primorsky, it would be great if we could see the map first. So the reason why I have circled a few areas is because I wanted to point them out later on. But first of all, when I first visited this region, that was back in 1987, and at the time, I had to show my passport to cross the borders. So free movement was not guaranteed back then. You had to show your passport, and then you had to slow down because there were guards in the border area, and of course COVID-19 suspended such cross-border movement. However, the movement was quite free before the pandemic. And the presenter talked about the case of Razon, and I will talk about that later on. But we have the Rhine River and the city of Strasbourg nearby, and Basel is also a transborder city. So Europe is rich of such transborder cities. They have their own unique system, but at the same time they follow an integrated economic model that can change the perception of the people, which can become an established thinking. This is the integration process of Europe. I'm sure that you know the footprint of this integration process. Back in 1992, this is a landmark treaty that was signed, Maastricht Treaty, which led to the forming of one union. With the Maastricht Treaty, the European countries adopted the currency euro. Here we have the Netherlands. Under Dutch, we have this borders of Belgium as well as Germany. Now, this is Schengen and Luxembourg, and members of this treaty are free of showing passport when passing borders. And that's thanks to the signing of this treaty. Luxembourg itself is a very small country, and it's a trans-border country that borders with France. So about 100 kilometers away is France, 200 kilometers away it's Germany. So this is a case that we can learn from. And once we sign a treaty like this one, then we can create a treaty that is named after the region. And the reason why Switzerland matters here is because Switzerland is not an EU member country. Of course, that does not mean that it is not a member of the single market. So the supplies as well as people will pass and will be exchanged freely. But anyways, it's not an EU member country, but it's part of the Schengen Treaty. That means that it is guaranteed free movement to an extent, to a certain extent. And Melrose as well as other Freiburg in Germany are some of the nearby regions. And these serve as hubs for economic growth and development. And I think that is different from the case of Tumen River. As I mentioned, how to further develop the bordering countries surrounding Basel. They have an independent organization and body that supervises this type of development, and this is BIS in Basel. I'm sure that you're well aware of this city because of BIS. Whenever I visit this city, I'm surprised at the traffic. There are so many people, tens of thousands of people pouring into the city from other neighboring countries and regions. Now, when you visit Basel, when you travel around this river, you will be able to reach a site where you have a view of the three neighboring countries.
공항도
And this is a possibility that we can tap on. This is the airport that the three countries share. Here you have France and Germany that you can travel by bus or train.
훈춘이나 이 나정 이 아래쪽에 복층
So if you go to Hunchun or Bangcheon, I wish that we could have such a transport network. And Mr. Kim Young-chol, who passed away, had this great ambition of creating this network that connects the North Korea, China, and Russia, and I wish to see the future anytime soon. So Razon and Primorsky should be the two cities where we connect transport network. And now these are side countries from China and North Korea. However, I believe that they have huge potential to grow and be developed. It is in that context that I would like to thank those dedicated behind this project. And well, one of the presenters said that Razon does not welcome and no longer invites individuals to the special economic zone. And I would like to know what types of investment then they receive. Yes, thank you very much. Visiting scholar Kim Young-chan for your insightful comment on the comparison between Tumen River, Primorsky, and Europe. I think this requires imagination, just like Europe. It may look like a far-fetched idea for now, but I'm sure that it will one day become a reality. Now I would like to invite Professor Choi-moon for his comments. Are you here with us? Yes. We hear you, we see you. You have 5 minutes.
Hello,
I am Professor Choi Moon from Yeonbyeon University. It was an impressive presentation, and I want to give my discussion on Professor Cho's presentation. And you talked about on page 9 about the tourism model in the Tumen River area. And for that, I want to mention that it's not progressing, and there is the sanction issue, so it cannot go ahead. So in the Tumen River, transboundary collaboration, the one that has biggest potential to be carried out is an area that will not be included in the sanctions, such as Baekdu Mountain tourism. Already from 2017, DPRK has created a tourism area there, and they have high luxury hotels, they have ski resorts, and they have modern facilities in this area. And in Yeonbyeon, Andong, and another area in Yeonbyeon, there are many tourist attractions in China, and they are thinking of such transboundary tourist sites. So North and South can utilize this Samjeong area and Baekdu Mountain as a tourist site to be developed. And I think it will be promising. I went to Samjin already, and DPRK, they have cable cars, and you can go all the way down to Cheonji, which is the peak of the Baekdu Mountain. And I drank water there, and I also had some nice sushi there. So such tourism sites will not be covered under the sanction, but we don't know how the United States will think about it. But anyway, it can all go ahead if things improve, and the Tumen River estuary transboundary tourism, that project can gain momentum if such tourist activities start in the Baekdu Mountain, and the network for the eco tourism and so forth can also gain momentum. And Professor Lee, in his presentation, talked about a commercial bank. In 2014, the central bank, they have branches, and they carried out a reform in commercial banks. So they separated the function of the central bank with the commercial bank. So the DPRK's central bank is like other central banks, performing supervisory functions and the foreign exchange issues. And commercial banks create business activity. So DPRK talks about financial institution property rights. So commercial banks in the past did not have proper deposit because the banks did not have credit worthiness. And Kim Jong-un pointed this out. And now they are saying commercial banks should ensure privacy and protection of data. So I went to Pyongyang several times to check the commercial bank situation, and I put in deposits and withdrew money from these commercial banks in DPRK. On page 14, Professor Lee talks about the loans, that there is a 3-year loan with an interest rate of 5 to 8%. Such the loan interest cannot be this low. In Pyongyang, the deposit interest rate is 7.5, so the loan interest will be far higher than that. And SSE, international cooperation, that can be done through co-ops, through production, and it can be connected with the other SSEs. This was mentioned, and I think that's feasible because in Kim Jong-un era, DPRK's light industry is developing, and the Chinese and the Korean consumers will like the DPRK products such as Pyongyang liquor and beer and Kaesong ginseng, so they can make this, and bottled water from Baekdu Mountain. These are some items that DPRK can produce and they can sell. So DPRK has production capabilities, and there's e-commerce facilitated. So in the future, Razon City and Tumen River can have transboundary e-commerce. Lastly, Kim Hyun-dong talked about the ethnic Koreans establishment and bari co-ops and various establishments of agriculture co-ops, and you have been doing great work. And at the end of your presentation, you talked about soybeans. In DPRK, they import soy. In 2019, the amount of imports of soybean is more than 100 million USD. Due to COVID-19, they don't have a lot of trade, but in 2020, they imported 66 million USD worth of soybean. So soybean is an area, a project that DPRK would be very much interested in.
Thank you very much, Professor Choi Moon. You visited North Korea many times, and you are an expert in what's happening in North Korea. So thank you very much for the thorough explanation. And you said that what we do in the zones will actually serve as the platform for future development projects. Now moving on to Mr. Lee Joo-sung. Yes, good morning. My name is Lee Joo-sung from Korea NGO Council for Cooperation with North Korea. Thank you for having me today. Thank you very much, Mr. Kim Chang-jin, the moderator, and thank you, organizer of this session. So we have been talking about cooperation with North Korea many times, but this is a session that provides actual options that we can take going forward, and you share such approaches and options to us. So thank you very much for that. Back in 2015, North Korea started its dialogue with our private sector, and at the time, time, what they said was that one-way humanitarian aid will not be an option anymore, and they will seek a different way for economic cooperation. And once the two Koreas agree on something, then we will look into different options. And well, the statement between the two Koreas actually laid out that it should be based on joint consensus. And the presenters presented the dramatic changes in North Korean society. They have their own agenda to express what they're doing right now, and that was actually shown in the VNR, and this was a new for everyone. And they talked about solidarity with the international community and to use such solidarity to improve the lives of its residents. North Korea is changing, which is why that the way we cooperate with North Korea must change, and that will bring change to the regime. And I believe that SSC has huge implications in that sense. Of course, transboundary cooperation was an option that we were exploring. However, because of COVID-19, it seems like everything was suspended, and we are re-asking ourselves, is there really that type of transboundary cooperation possible? But still, of course, cooperation must happen, and we see cases of transboundary cooperation that goes beyond borders and physical locations. And I think that we can utilize much more platforms because we have the virtual platform. And once SSC organizations and bodies join online platforms, then they will see vibrant activities. One case would be to create a virtual village that can invite Primorsky as well as Razon economies and economic bodies there, so that they can promote economic activities. And they can also provide microcredit and create and launch trade offices, provide training for startups. So by transcending the boundaries, we will be able to achieve so much. But is that really feasible? I've studied North Korea's projects for the past 2 decades, and sometimes I said, no, this won't be possible, but now I want to test the boundaries and the limitations. Recently, North Korea said that it will use the online platform, and it has actually joined virtual meetings to speak to the international community, and more options have been given to the regime on the virtual platform. SSC can be embedded on the online platform to enjoy more growth. And I would like to know what Professor Lee thinks of that idea. And President Kim talked about projects and SSC possible projects in Primorsky, and I would like to know more about what you had in mind. Yes, thank you very much for your comments. And Professor Tumen briefly talked about this as well, but the cooperation initiatives between the two Koreas and in Northeast Asia was done in person. But now President Lee Joo-sung raised a very important question about moving that online, because that can be so much more effective due to COVID-19. So thank you very much for that insightful comment. And once this meeting is over, I'm sure that so many people will search Basel and transboundary online platforms on different portal sites. Thank you very
지금
much for your
저에게
discussions.
온라인으로 다시 질문이 몇 개 나와 있기 때문에
And since we have a few questions that were uploaded on YouTube, I would like to
2, 3분의 짧은
ask you
답변
a few
부탁드리겠습니다.
questions,
지금
and I will give you 2 to 3
2분입니다.
minutes each
자, 저에게
to
들어온
answer the questions.
질문
The first question is this.
지금 말씀드릴게요. 4개 질문이 나왔네요.
We have 4 questions in total.
자, 첫 번째 라선에서
First
북한이
question is about Razon.
남한과 일본과 협력해야 될 인센티브.
So,
이 관계는 어떤 것이 있을까요?
what would be the interests
우리
for
이찬 교수님이 답변해
North
주시면
Korea to
좋겠고요.
cooperate with
또
Japan
이찬
and
교수님이
South
질문드립니다.
Korea? I
첫 번째,
ask Itano to
만약
answer
북한이
that.
라선을
Number 2 is
소극적
if
협력 지역으로 문을 열었을
North
때
Korea was to
북한
open
지대
its
안전에
Razon special
위협의
economic zone,
요소가
then
실제로
are
있을지
there
궁금합니다.
any
어떤
risks
협력이,
in that
어떤 수준의 협력이 가능할 거예요. 두 번째 질문.
possibility, option, and what can we do in that zone? Number 3, and do you think that any Japanese organizations are interested in cooperating with North Korea? And number 4 goes to Mr. Kim. So any organizations in Primorsky, can they collaborate with bodies in Russia and then actually trade with North Korean agencies? And there is this one person who said was impressed by what Professor Chaemun said. Any possibility for cooperation between North Korean regime, its local authorities, as well with other regions in other countries. So now I would like to hand you over the microphone and give you 2 to 3 minutes each to answer the questions.
말씀드리시면 감사하겠습니다. 네, 우리 이찬호 교수님.
First, Professor Itano. Yes, thank you very much for the question.
저는 개인적으로 라손에
Personally,
몇 차에 걸쳐서
I visited Razon a few times, and I had the opportunity to speak with some people from Razon and visited some of their plants. So it was based on my experience that I put together my presentation. And of course, one of the questions that was raised back then was the question of interest rate, because I visited the commercial bank and I conducted an interview with a personnel there, and I asked about the low interest rate, and that person said, well, that was because of the fierce competition. That was in September 2017, and in 2018, not much was changed. And of course, the situation in Pyongyang must be different. But when it comes to Razon, the Donju fight fiercely over loan programs, which brought down the interest rate. And is it a one and off low interest rate, or is it for the long run? Of course, we need to have a longer a wider perspective to analyze that, but at the time it was quite low. And when it comes to international cooperation, many projects can take place in Razon, but residents in Razon, they have a relatively high level of autonomy because they can build co-ops and bodies. They don't need to go through the approval process from the Pyongyang authorities. Of course, the same goes for South Korea, but I think that regional authorities will control most of the programs in North Korea. And we talked about Sinŭiju and Razon, but the special economic zones are given special treatment, and transboundary cooperation is possible in Razon. So given that, I believe that Razon can serve as a test bed for different pilot projects. Of course, now the country has undergone a lockdown because of COVID-19. However, since its creation of the special economic zone, it had a different set of goals. So, of course, regime security is another set of goals. But when it comes to the economic special zone, then North Korea has been conducting different experiments since the 1990s. And to North Korea, Razon has built history over the past 3 decades. Now, the purpose of Razon is to improve the lives of the North Korean residents and to foster economic growth. And that is the point that I would like to make. And there can be different types of incentives given to North Korea, but anyways, it could process its resources, especially fisheries, and it also has a maritime university in Razon, which is the only one kind in North Korea. And by training experts, they could send fishing ships to other countries, and we could tap into possibility of joint projects in such technical assistance as well as co-projects in the area of fishing as well. Now, we can't say that there is one specific civic organization in Japan, but from Akita, Dotori, as well as other provinces, then they've been quite interested in North Korea, including the abductee problem. And there have been many businesses that went to North Korea for business. So it was more led by the private sector rather than the civic organization in terms of co-projects with North Korea. So with that, I would like to wrap up my answers. Thank you very much for that.
Next, we will hear from Mr. Hyun-dong Kim.
남북로 협력 뭐 이런 표현을 많이 하는데
People talk about South and North cooperation, and I received a question, and it was mentioned by Professor Che too. In Primorsky, there's vast resources, and once we get experience there, it will move on to another area into Russia, Amurzu, and another area, and this can help in overcome the food crisis. And I think we have laid the route for the beginning. And we have the physical resources that enabled cooperation with DPRK and so forth. So I think it's quite important that we have now laid the foundation. Then how are we going to add efficiency to this to add speed? We have this sharing and moving together movements. So there are many activities that ethnic Koreans can participate in, and this may help inter-Korean relations too. So although North and South may not conduct activities directly together, if we have ethnic Koreans participating, then maybe it can go forward faster, and this will help in building a trust network. Once we have this trust network built up, more roads can be opened up. The reason why we don't have new roads opening up is because we don't have experience in certain areas and we don't have the imagination. In Primorsky, we have started this work. There is the Ethnic Korean Unification Organization in Primorsky. So there are many organizations that can play this intermediary role between the two Koreas. And the Korea's overseas agriculture activity and farm work can be connected with this too. The ethnic Korean farms, there were 6 villages, and in 2007 we had 200 some households living there. Now the residents Koreans have left.
국내 재외동포의 귀환과 관련돼 있는 문제일 수
It's
있는데
related to the ethnic Koreans returning to South Korea. So the residents living in Primorsky are being threatened because of this. There are 1 million ethnic Koreans who have returned to South Korea, and 800,000 to 900,000 are ethnic Koreans who lived in China. They have returned to South Korea, and they are now building up a society here in South Korea. And the population of these ethnic Koreans returning to South Korea will increase. And those living in Primorsky, they may want to come back to South Korea, because they had to settle in Primorsky due to difficulties returning to South Korea in the past. But if these roads are opened up, then they might want to come back to South Korea, and this may lead to a reduction in the activities that we have carried out in Primorsky. We want to bear fruit in this area so that we make this area into a livable area. It's quite urgent that we create this area into a livable area, so many people will want to go there. Thank you. We now will give the last few minutes to Professor Jo and then Professor Che. Thank you very much. I will complete my remarks in a minute. So Ju-sung Lee gave us a very good idea. We talk about metabus, and we talked about this too. We'll think about metabus and the social economy being established in South and North. The direct North and South exchange and cooperation is blocked right now, so we have to go in a roundabout way using international cooperation. The North is not interested in carrying SDG products with South Korea, and it's likewise the other way around. So we need to create an institution for us to communicate on SDG issues. And the SDG and social economy, we are trying to make preparations to facilitate this. Lastly, I want to say that SSE, a trust network is critical, and we should have a pioneer spirit. So those who are watching, we ask you to participate, and I'm thinking of going to Basel too. Professor Che from Yeonbyon University. In Hunchun, through e-commerce, there are some Chinese companies trying to sell DPRK products, and there are more than 1,000 DPRK products on these e-commerce sites. We can see these products, and Hananuri and other civil organizations, you can promote DPRK products in South Korea, and there are many other ways to sell these products. There might be a platform to sell these products. If we have a platform like that, that will be desirable. And there can be some products that continuously sell well. And for those products, in the long term, we may be able to produce that through a co-op, and there can be manufacturing cooperation. So there should be trade cooperation. After development of trade, there can be a cooperation in other areas such as production and manufacturing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we heard from 3 presenters and 3 discussants, and also entertained some questions from the audience. We are behind time, so we would like to wrap up session 4-1, and it was a great opportunity to learn about the transboundary cooperation project. I would like to share one case from Quebec. I actually wrote a book about this case, and they have SSEs that created a solidarity economy and solidarity education. All the preschool in Quebec connect together based on this network, and they led to huge success, and I believe that that would be possible in Northeast Asia as well. And as I said, of course, East Asia has many different countries, including the two Koreas, China and Japan. But without trust, nothing can happen. So there are many skeptics over this type of cooperation project. However, we don't have trust from scratch. It starts off with experience and mechanism. So not vice versa. So we can explore different options to create cooperation projects which will eventually lead to trust. And we see many different types of case studies. So I think we should be more positive with respect to this type of projects going forward. We are behind time, but if there is one question from the audience, I would like to maybe entertain one question. I think we have one more question on YouTube. Yes, so this is about what Professor Tumen said, and to Professor Jo Sung-chan, between Korea and Gillim, is there any specific projects that took place between the two regions? If not, then in what areas could the two regions cooperate going forward? Professor Tumen?
I'm not well aware of that. I don't know. Did you hear the question? I heard the question, but I don't have an answer to that. I don't know about a social economic organization. Since we don't have any more time, we will now end this session 4-1 from the space of confrontation to the space of solidarity, social solidarity, and economic cooperation. Thank you very much for your participation, both on and offline. Thank you.